American patriots, this is a plea. As Reagan once said, we are one generation away from our freedoms being extinct. Fast forward to today, I believe we are one election away from our freedoms being extinct. We can no longer be complacent. We must stand up and fight for America First conservatives at all levels of politics. I will refuse to be the generation to explain to my kid what freedom was like. Decades of damage has been done. It's our time. It's our country. It's our freedoms. You are listening to the Light of Liberty podcast. Welcome to the Light of Liberty podcast. Josh and Greg back at it, seeking and spreading truth to safeguard our freedoms. We've got a lot to discuss with elections right around the corner, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. As we continue to say, this November is our 1776 moment, and the way Pennsylvania goes is the way the nation's going to go this November, and we must get this right. Our freedoms are on the line, and that's what we're truly voting for. It's socialism versus freedom, and I don't know about you, Greg, but I pick freedom every time. So joining us today is someone who has a reputation of seeking truth and safeguarding those freedoms. The man behind possibly the largest patriotic grassroots movement in Pennsylvania from Unite PA. Welcome to the show, Sam Faddis.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
We're glad you're able to make some time for us tonight. Get a little conversation going here. You want to let some of the listeners know a little bit about your background?
Well, I'm a former Army officer. I'll just go ahead and tell you the skeleton in my closet. I'm also an attorney. That's the real secret I try to hide. I was an undercover officer in the Central Intelligence Agency, operations officer for 20 years, worked with other parts of the intelligence community for another 10, but really, I am here now in my capacity, having moved back to the great state of Pennsylvania, based on my involvement with this coalition of patriot groups, somewhere north of 75 groups across the state, and we are laser focused on election integrity and taking us back to in-person voting. That is our demand.
Yeah, that's incredible. With everything that's been going on since 2020, everybody still is pretty laser focused on that election integrity, and that's one of the big issues is will my vote count? Who's voting? How long is the vote going to take to count? I mean, look what's happening in Arizona right now. Like, what the hell? They're still counting. I think Maricopa County is just announcing we're going to release results maybe Thursday night. It's incredible. How do we allow that? And the mess that's going on over there, they ran out of ballots. I think Pinal County, the election director just resigned, David Frisk. So it's a complete mess. It's like nothing, they didn't learn anything from 2020.
I think all the ballots are in the mail right now.
Yeah, well, you guys are putting your finger on the essential truth here, which is, I think explains, well, what's the right word to use? The anger behind this movement. Because 2020 was a mess, and it wasn't just a mess. It was the result of a lot of deliberate actions which are intended to steal elections. I mean, this is not just incompetence. There is an agenda here behind this. 2020, we saw what happened. We're getting ready to go into the next general election in the Commonwealth. The short version is that the state legislature, even though it is under Republican control, right, has not actually made a single meaningful change since then. So no. After we've seen that, and after we've had 2 years to look at it, they have literally not lifted a finger. And I can tell you, I walked out of a meeting today with yet another legislator, crystal clear, zero effort underway. I don't care about the smoke, the mirrors, the parlor tricks. Enough with the bad lies. They're doing nothing. So we are getting ready to go into a November election 2 years after the last one. And we are going to run the exact same play we ran last time. And again, it's not just a disaster. It's not just incompetence and confusion, although there's a lot of that. We are seeing a deliberate effort to steal elections that so far has been terrifyingly successful, and we're doing nothing to respond to it. That's the God's honest truth. It's very depressing, but it's the God's honest truth.
Yeah, we see some action. I mean, we saw Senator Mastriano write up a bill to have some more securities in the election, just to see Wolf use his almighty veto pen again. I don't know how many times this guy's filled that thing with ink, but he vetoes everything coming across the desk, and it's so evident that they just don't want anything to make it to make it cleared up for the elections. That a bill that comes across saying we're going to give more power to poll watchers to make things clean, have more oversight. They don't want oversight, so that's why it gets vetoed and gets scrapped. I saw the U.S. Post Office is now making a new division for election mail, and it's like they already had election mail, supposedly a whole process for that. So now they're going to make another division. They're just making things more complicated and putting another step in the way of keeping things clean.
Yeah, well, look, I was raised in a military family, and I was in the military before I was in the agency. And in the agency, we worked in many ways in a similar fashion in the military. I was raised on a principle that will resonate with every vet listening, which is, the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. So basically the idea is you can build these fairy tale castles in the sky with these incredibly complicated structures. And I guess in academia that works. Theoretically, this thing will work. In reality, it doesn't work. So the entire mail-in Dropbox system is filled with holes you can drive a Mack truck through. I mean, pieces of paper show up in the mail and you count them as ballots. Now, if as a matter of common sense, you start making a list of all the questions you would need to answer to actually confirm the legitimacy of that ballot. Who cast it? Is he a legal voter? How do you know he cast it? Is he still alive? Is he voting in PA, but also Ohio and West Virginia? How do you know? On down this list, yada, yada. The answer is in the current system, there is no mechanism at all. That there is no such mechanism. So you have a system that is fundamentally broken. And the other thing I'd emphasize here is this idea of moving to mail-in systems had been an agenda of the Democratic Party for a very long time. And for very obvious reasons, because of all the things I just said, because it provides an opportunity to manipulate and steal elections. It gives you a capacity to control the outcome. So we're going to have an election, the appearance of an election, but at the end of the day, we already know, right? It's a show thing. It's like the old Soviet Union election or something. That's the agenda, and it's so far being very, very successful. And if you say all of that, of course, you're a conspiracy theorist. Just like 2 years ago, if you suggested that the virus COVID came out of the biolab in Wuhan, China, you were a crazy person. And just if you raised questions about the effectiveness of a vaccine that had never been tested on anybody, you were told that's insane. If you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. In the same way, you're just told you're a conspiracy theorist if you raise obvious common sense questions. There's nothing crazy about it. There's, Bigfoot is not involved in any of this. You don't have to be spending your time at Roswell looking for UFOs. This is as real as it gets, but our legislature is literally doing nothing to fix this problem right now.
It just takes observation and experience to put the 2 and 2 together and see what's happening, and it's not profiling or doing anything bad like that. I mean, we can see with our bare, our own eyes what's happening out there.
Yeah, and I think heading in that direction, with the legislators not doing anything for us, our elected officials aren't hearing our voices anymore. Give us that 50,000 foot view of the patriotic grassroots movements that are going across this state, and tell us why we, the people, it's now our turn to let our voices be heard.
Right. So, I mean, I use the term Patriot Movement. You can use whatever term you want, America First, MAGA, whatever. Okay. The strength of the Patriot Movement in Pennsylvania has been, in a weird way, its weakness for a long time. And this is true nationwide. You got all these very independent-minded people. They stand up these groups. They evolve independently, and they don't come together. They don't unite. They don't cooperate. You feed in a certain amount of personal rivalry and, human interaction. So what we've done here, and I guess I'm sort of spearheading this, but really, to be honest with you, what I'm doing is giving voice to what I have heard from groups all over the state, right? I mean, we've brought all these groups together to form a coalition now. And, I sort of sparked that, but based on the fact that I knew all of these group leaders, had talked to them all, and they all independently had already recognized, hey, we got to get past this and we got to get together. We can't continue to be independent tribes, or we're going to continue to have the establishment disregard us. So in that sense, it was just getting them together to recognize the fact that, hey, listen, all you guys have already arrived at the same conclusion. Now let's do this. So, we got them all in a room in Allentown on the 30th of April of this year to sign an election integrity declaration that says, really simply, take us back to in-person voting. There's a couple of more lines, but it's about that brief. We've already had some actions as a coalition. We've gone from the initial 40 groups that signed the declaration to at least 75. And the reason I'm hazy on the numbers is because it depends on how you count. Because like some of the groups that are represented here are themselves coalitions of multiple groups. So one of them actually consists of 17 separate groups. Another group consists of 15 separate groups. So if you want, you could actually say, really realistically, we're talking about over 100 Patriot groups at this point. And we're now in the process of building a formal leadership structure for that. In other words, this is not we're coming together, doing a couple of things, and then going back to marching in our different directions. This is going to be an ongoing thing. We are also focused on building new groups, bringing groups in that aren't yet part of the coalition, and recruiting people into existing groups, basically adding muscle mass, if you will, to this whole thing. And in the immediate future, we're building to a rally that we're going to have on the 27th of August. Going to be outside Bloomsburg. You can go to unitepa.net, unitepa.net, click on the events tab, give you all the info. It's going to be at a big arena there that holds thousands of folks. We're going to have Catherine Engelbrecht of True the Vote is going to come speak as the keynote. We're going to have a good friend of mine, Jack Maxey, that folks may know, who's going to come talk to us about Hunter's laptop. And the point of Jack talking is to say, you think elections have consequences? You have no idea what the consequences are. Because here's the evil that sits in the White House now because of what happened. Going to have some other big names from PA side of things. Tony Shoup of Audit the Vote and so forth will be there. But the point is, every speaker is there for a reason. This is not death by speaker, if you know what I mean. This is not 25 people just blathering on. Everybody who gets up there is up there for a reason. For instance, Tony's up there to talk about her own journey from being, she speaks in a very self-deprecating style. She's too modest, but, her own journey, as she would describe it, from being a housewife to the leader of actually the biggest patriot group in the state. Her whole point of that speech is, you think you can't make a difference, think again. You can get in the game. You can do it. And the whole thing builds at the end of this to a specific call to action to every patriot group and every person that's there. You go back into your state reps district, state senators district, door knocking, town halls, out in front of their offices. You turn up the heat and you tell them, this pressure will not end until you return us to in-person voting. You got two choices. You can either give us what we want, or you can tell us that you're ready to fight, and we'll go to the mat and we'll figure out who comes out on top. That's the excuses are gone. We're not listening to anything else. Only one thing will satisfy the Patriot Movement. Take us back to in-person voting, election day, hard copy ballots.
Yeah, the pressure can work. I think that's what we saw in Lancaster and Lebanon County, was it? They got their drop box removed.
Lancaster, yeah.
Yeah, up in Lancaster. I mean, so they had the pressure there, people standing up at their meetings, and they got theirs removed. And so what you're talking about is people going back to their homes and speaking up on their local levels, and you can make change happen.
So is that
the key is that you got to understand here that folks have to understand, I wish we lived in a different world, right? I wish we lived in the world of puppies and rainbows.
This feels like a different world, I tell you.
My background is, well, first of all, most people listening to this probably know they didn't grow up in that world either. I can guarantee you, as an intelligence officer working overseas, I never found that world. We wish that we could ask these people to do the right thing, and they would do it. What has been made clear is that asking doesn't get us anywhere. The only thing that will matter to them is political pressure. And really what that boils down to is there are so many of us that if you don't do what we want, the next time around, you're going to lose your job. You're going to be voted out. I mean, that's the cutting edge of the whole thing, ultimately, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, we're going to need to keep the pressure on because, I mean, and that's a worry, I guess, is if we get them to make some changes right now, and then they get voted back in, we got to keep the pressure up, or they're going to roll back to their old ways, knowing they're locked in for X number of years again.
Well, I can tell you where we are. Because we have a lot of contact with the leadership. I've had a lot of personal conversations and get a lot of feedback. They are well aware, and I'm talking now the Republican leadership because they control the House and the Senate. They're well aware of the existence of the coalition. They don't like it. They don't like the pressure. They have on several instances actually asked us to back off, like it's starting to pinch. I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's a signal when you hear your opponent start to squeal like that. That just means it's time to apply more pressure.
Yep.
We're not yet at the point where they feel the pain so much that they are ready to do what we have demanded. So, we're partway there. We didn't win the fight yet. So that's the rally is part of this. The rally is not the end of anything. As I said, the rally is not just get there and be psyched and have a good time. It will be a good time. There's going to be food, drink, live country music. We're going to take breaks between speakers. It'll be a destination and a fun day, and folks will get pumped up. But the point is to use it as a launching pad, and that action will then be followed by more action and more action and more groups and bigger groups and recruiting. And I should throw this out. If you're not a member of a Patriot group already, you're not kind of in the fight already, please come to Bloomsburg and come on the 27th of August. I mean, because our whole reason for existing is not just to be talking to each other that are already woke, if you will, right? It's to be talking to the folks who don't yet get the danger. So, come there. We invite folks that are skeptical, the folks that haven't yet, that want to know, okay, where's the evidence of election fraud and election theft? Please, right? We all believe in truth and dialogue and conversation. So I would love to have thousands of people in Bloomsburg who are there that are not affiliated with groups and listen to us and see if we convince you.
That would be good. I mean, if there's so are the groups that are going to be there, are they going to have, I don't know if it's going to be like tables or stands set up? So for the individual groups, so people can they can kind of filter their way to the groups, maybe local to where they live, get their information, sign on.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to have, look, when you come in, nobody's going to make you sign up. Nobody's going to force you to give your personal information. But we are going to have booths inside where it'll be a little bit of a carnival atmosphere. And during breaks, people have an opportunity to go there to get information. Also, if they want to provide personal information so we can contact them. Again, nobody's forcing you to do that. Nobody's going to suck the data out of you. But absolutely, you will be able to connect. That is a big part of this thing. You go there, you feel like you want to get in the fight. And honestly, if you go to unitepa.net, which is where the event is advertised, there's also an opportunity under that via unitepa.net to email us right now and say, hey, I want in the fight, basically. Can you help me? As of right now, I personally respond to every one of those emails. Sometimes that takes me a while on a given day. But my attitude is if you took the time to write to us and you want connected, I'm going to respond to you. And I'm going to put you in contact with a group. Or if there's no group in your area, the next thing you're going to hear from me is, I'll help you start a group.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's the kind of guy we need.
Well, look, you go all over the state, and I speak all the time all over the state. Sometimes you walk into a place, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this phenomenon. There's 500 people in a meeting room, and that's just a routine meeting of the group on a Tuesday night. I've gone to places where it was 8 guys sitting in a barn, and they're still trying to figure out exactly what they're doing. All they know is we're really upset and we got to do something. And that's cool with me. Let's sit down here and roll up our sleeves and start sorting it out, because every group starts the same way, with just kind of a kernel of people that say, I'm tired of watching, I want to make a difference.
I think Josh had that same thought, didn't you?
Yeah. So we really talk about knowledge is power, but the true right now is action is power. So your rally individual will be able to get so much information, so much knowledge, and create their opinion and their thoughts on what's there, and then possibly being able to take action and join the effort to. We all know something's wrong, right? Even the ones that deny it know there's something up. There's something up in the air, right? So we gotta focus on that middle of the road, that undecided voter there that's kind of in the fence here, leading up into this election in particular in Pennsylvania, because we need all the votes we can get, because we're not going to stop the cheating and the anomalies and things like that. We're not going to 100% stop it. It's impossible. It's just gotten too far out of hand. We're going to do our best to limit all of that to our best ability, and going forward back to in-person voting. You vote in one day, you count in one day. If they can do it overseas, we can do it here. And that's where it needs to be. All this mail-in voting needs to go. The drop boxes have got to go, and the machines they got to table the machines. Get them out of here.
And we like to be specific on it's no excuse mail-in voting that we want to go, because sometimes we generalize and say the mail-in voting, and then everybody assumes like absentee voting is going to go away. Everything that was there originally, is fine. It's this no excuse voting that just infuriates us. It screams lazy to me is what it does. We find so much time to do nonsense things in our lives. It doesn't take that much effort to go to the polls, show up in person, and cast your vote, and do some research. If you're too lazy to come to the polls, then in my opinion, you're probably too lazy to look to see what the issues are, who's running, and make a qualified decision on who should be representing people.
Yeah, well, excellent point. If you go to unitepa.net, you will also see the full text of the Election Integrity Declaration, to which all the Patriot groups have signed. And one of the specific provisions there is, after we say we want to go back to in-person voting, election day, hard copy ballot, there's a specific provision there. I'll paraphrase the language that says, with the absentee ballot provisions that existed prior to Act 77. So it is very explicitly stated, listen, you got medical reasons you can't be at the polls. Nobody's disenfranchising you. You're a military service member serving overseas. You can't get back to Pennsylvania to vote. Nobody's disenfranchising you. As you guys have noted, we had a system for dealing with this before Act 77, before we went to no excuse mail-in voting. We are by no means suggesting that we're going to erase that. Nobody's being disenfranchised. But we got to go back to a system where you trust the result. And the other thing I would emphasize to people here is, the media, of course, most of it does a terrible job of covering this. Most of that, in my estimation, very deliberate. They either lie or they just don't talk about a lot of things. There has been an agenda on the left for a very long time to completely transform the electoral system. And if you want to see what that looks like, go online and look up the text of H.R. 1, which is a bill that was introduced into Congress. Hopefully not going anywhere, but what it represents is, right there in black and white, is the full fantasy of the Democratic Party. And again, hopefully will never go anywhere, because even many of the Democrats are not that extreme that they're going to go for. But what you can see there is that what happened in 2020 is the beginning of a process. It was not the end of anything. It's the first steps toward a much more fundamental transformation. Ideally, they want the federal government to take control of all elections so that Washington will run every election. Now, they got a little problem because the Constitution pretty explicitly says
this dang little piece of paper.
But they've been getting so far from the Constitution, it's getting a little ridiculous.
So that's a problem, but they have a number of other elements to this. So felons, under the full scope, when this is fully implemented, if it is allowed to grow to its full extent, felons will be able to vote. There will be no ID requirement of any kind. There will be no citizenship requirement of any kind. There will be no proof of entitlement of any kind to your right to vote. Anybody can vote. You won't have to even request a mail-in ballot. They will push ballots to every, and in fact, this is already under discussion in Pennsylvania at the Secretary of State's office. They will literally push a mail-in ballot to every name and every address that appears in any database that the state of Pennsylvania maintains. Now, think about all the agencies and all the bureaus that might have a database that has names of people they compiled for reasons that have nothing to do with elections. And there was no citizenship check, no, is this person legal, illegal, are they a felon, whatever, right? They were just compiled for some other purpose. The state will aggregate all of that data and then send a ballot to every one of those names. Again, no system for, are they still in Pennsylvania? Were they ever legally entitled to vote? Do they still live there? Did anybody ever really? No system at all. So I could go on with this, but my point is to say, when you're all done with this, what you have is a system that is designed. The whole purpose is to guarantee one party rule forever. It's very explicit. And there is a huge amount of money in the country from nonprofits, leftist nonprofits, that supports this. So your Secretary of State right now is a lady named Lee Chapman, Leigh, appointed by Wolf to replace the lady who was in there before her, Kathy Boockvar, who was very much the same deal. Lee Chapman's entire life work has been this project of the Democratic Party nationwide. Colorado is their biggest success story. They always point to. They took a red state and turned it blue. So state by state by state, with huge amounts of money, they go through to methodically, fundamentally change. So we still got Republican legislators kind of sitting around just oblivious to all of this. And, on the one hand, you have to hand it to them. The other side is moving aggressively. They got a lot of money. They know exactly what their objective is. They're very, very organized. And meanwhile, our guys are kind of sitting around like, it'll probably be okay. No need to worry about it. You're like, man, I've had conversations where state reps, GOP state reps, where I've said, don't you understand that everything that happened to Donald Trump in 2020 is going to happen to you the next time you run for office? Right? The next thing you know, you're going to turn around and find out you don't have a majority in the House and the Senate anymore. And then you're going to realize you're never getting it back. You're going to realize you lost it forever and your window is closed.
The Democrats have outplayed us for quite some time now.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're gonna lose that. And if we don't have groups like you to really push this forward and to make change, because our legislators aren't doing it, and if they're not going to do it, we're going to vote them out. And like you said, it's that political pressure, and this. It takes one generation to lose our freedoms, right? Ronald Reagan, right?
I think it's a good play for Pennsylvania doing all these groups, because it's just so easy right now for, somebody who just knows something's wrong, wants to take action. There's enough groups out there they can just, sign on with these groups, and the playbook's already there, so they can tell you, like, this is what we're doing, this is what we need you to do, and make it easy, because so many people, they just don't know what that next step is. It's like, I don't like what's happening, but I don't know what to do. Well, we have plenty of people to help you realize what you can do to help.
Yeah, 100%. And look, you guys, I'm sure, have learned this lesson in life, and I certainly have. It's really easy to talk yourself out of trying to do something. It's really easy to convince yourself, well, yeah, I'd love to do it, but I don't really know what to do. And I don't really. Okay, well, that's kind of life, right? You get up and you move and you try something. And yeah, you're probably going to fall down a couple of times. I mean, I don't want to make this sound like a Rocky movie, but, you just get up and move, man. Just get up and try it. Try not to do anything so catastrophically stupid that you don't get another try.
Yeah.
Well, basically accept the fact. Okay, yeah. Do you think you're going to fall down and make some mistakes? I got news for you. Yes, you're going to fall down and make some mistakes, and then you'll get up, and the second time you try it, all of a sudden you'll have a lot of stuff figured out, right? And so, that's one of the big reasons I said why Tony Shoup is speaking. First of all, she's a major figure in the whole movement statewide. biggest patriot group in the state, audit the vote. But to just, because she's going to stand up there as the humble person she is and say, listen, I hear you. You think you can't do it. You think it's too big. Been there. And here's how, and the bottom line is you just plow through it. Just try. Just get moving.
It is. Part of my story was just, getting uncomfortable. What we're doing here now, this was not anything I ever envisioned myself doing. It's out of my wheelhouse, but it came to a point where you have to get uncomfortable and do new things and put yourself out there. And nothing bad has happened as a result of this. So it's more good things keep happening because of the podcast that we're doing, and we're meeting more great people like you. You know what I mean? And we want to just keep continuing this and just keep spreading, getting bigger, meeting more people, and just trying to help PA, which is going to help the nation.
Yeah, and you bring up that political pressure, right? And we try to find wins throughout the nation and in Pennsylvania. And looking at Arizona, the mess that's going on out there, and some of the other primary elections this week, you look, I think 6 to 7 Republicans were voted out that had impeached Donald Trump. So the change, it can happen, and people see that, and those are wins we got to take, and we got to understand how those wins occur and move forward and go to that next win and go to that next fight.
Well, look, even in Pennsylvania, man, I get it that it's a long slog. Okay. You use the old tired metaphor. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but it's real. But there's been the power of this Patriot movement, of this America First movement, whatever you call it, in Pennsylvania is pretty impressive. Doug Mastriano is the nominee for governor. Doug Mastriano, a little over a year and a half ago, because he was crosswise with the establishment and wouldn't toe the party line, they pulled his committee chairmanship, they took away his staff, and they told him he couldn't caucus with the other Republicans, which means when all the other Senate Republicans go behind closed doors, where actually the plan is made for everything they do, they told Doug, you got to stand on the other side of the door. Basically, they kneecapped him in broad daylight in Harrisburg, right? And in typical old school Pennsylvania politics fashion, we're not shy about it. They tried to kill this guy off. Now, folks have supported him. Folks maybe didn't support him. The bottom line is he's a grassroots candidate who the establishment wanted killed politically. And now he is the candidate for governor of the Republican Party. It's
amazing.
He is our candidate.
Seismic. Yeah. Okay. The two guys, Stan Saylor and Pat Brown, who ran respectively the appropriations committees in the House and Senate. And if you don't understand how legislature works, for viewers, that means they control all the money. So if you're the appropriations committee chair in the Senate and in the House, you're at the top of the food chain. And the way this works in state politics is you don't ever lose an election. You stay in office until you decide you want to move on to something else. They'd both been in office for 28 years. These guys, forget it. You run for re-election. It's a given. You can phone this in. You never lose. Both of those guys defeated in the primary by first-time challengers from the Patriot movement. You don't think that's an earthquake in Harrisburg? Mastriano is your gubernatorial candidate, and two of the guys at the very pinnacle of state politics, at the heart of the beast, just were defeated by guys who shouldn't have ever had a prayer. What that tells them is there's a lot of power. That's why they don't like this coalition. That's why, frankly, they whine at us quite a bit. Burn off. I had a call from an establishment type just last week. Please tell the Patriot movement to stop criticizing establishment politicians until after the general election. I'm like,
you give us something to stop criticizing, and we would.
First of all, you don't understand anything about the Patriot movement or me. One, I would never make that request. Two, the Patriot movement would never respond. That's not the way it works. They don't follow orders. Are you kidding me? Don't you understand anything about this whole thing? We are done with this nonsensical system in which we follow orders. The only thing that would happen if I said that to them, which I would never say, is they would instantaneously look at me and say, oh, you are one of them now. right?
Yeah.
My credibility would be gone in
Yeah.
about a nanosecond. I would be irrelevant. So obviously my response is there's no way. That's not happening, man. And basically what you've just confirmed to me is you don't understand anything about what is happening politically in the state.
Yeah, and that's
These
what.
people respond to orders, forget it. They don't respond to anybody's orders, and they should not.
No.
Because, by the way, they're the ones who hold all the power. You're supposed to be listening to them, not the other way around.
Yeah, them asking the question just tells you that they know they're not doing the job they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, we will not comply. We will not comply
Exactly
with
right.
the
There you
mask
go.
mandates, the vaccine mandates, all that bull crap that
Shot
they're trying to move forward, and people lose their job. I lost my job because of the vaccine mandate, and it blows my mind what's happening and how this country is just on the verge of this socialistic agenda. And I mean, you look at Speaker Pelosi heading over to Taiwan, and
Yeah, there's
communist
more corruption right
China,
there.
like saying, "You step foot, we're going to go to war." And it's like, what is going on with Taiwan, China, our current administration, the resident in the White House? What's all going on with this agenda here?
Well, I mean, looking at taking it a couple of steps back. What I always say to folks when I'm speaking, which I do a lot of, is I said, listen, if the press, the mainstream press, whatever term you want to use for it, keeps trying to convince you that the political dynamics in the United States all consist of white people versus black people versus brown people, gay people versus straight people, I guess trans people versus everybody. It's all this nation divided, and it's filled with white supremacists and domestic violent extremists and all of this stuff. And you're like, okay, well, that's not, first of all, most of that is just flat out a lie. That's not what the actual political dynamic in this country is at all. What the political dynamic in the country is on one side, you got the overwhelming majority of Americans, the folks that pay the bills and pay the taxes, and by the way, fight all the wars. And on the other side, you get this tiny little percentage of people who are unbelievably wealthy, control the political class, control the media. And they, it's kind of like they want you to continue to have a republic for show, like I was suggesting earlier. Yeah, we'll have some elections, like to make you feel better. But we don't actually want those elections to mean anything. Like, even if you got a choice, it's a choice between two guys that are exactly the same, right? And they are all bought into what is this giant globalist, agenda, which is why I think talking about the MAGA movement as being America first in many ways is very apt. It's like, look, man, I'm tired of watching factories close and having my shopping options reduced to the dollar store, while Apple tells me it's recording once again record profits from selling me stuff made in China, right? By the way, the overwhelming majority of people in China are being screwed too, right? The guy making your iPhone,
It's like slave labor.
Yeah. Well, even the guys that aren't, I mean, some of them are outright slaves. Even the guys that aren't slaves, at the end of the shift, which could be God knows how long, they literally go to bunk rooms often where they sleep like 8 guys to a room in bunk beds with communal toilets and showers. And they get to go home like once a year to visit their family. And then, the amount of money you put in your pocket is exactly nothing, right? So that guy's getting screwed. The guy who doesn't have a job anymore in the United States is getting screwed. But at the top of this, we got people like Pelosi and her husband who are with ungodly sums of money. So what do they want? They just want this system that is benefiting them. And unfortunately, way too many of the politicians are completely bought and paid for,
And they're exempt
they're
from a lot of
owned by-
laws. They're exempt from a lot of laws that we have to adhere to. I mean, the insider trading law. I mean, that, members of, Pelosi, she's not adhering to that. So it's.
Well, I'll give you an example of Pelosi just to, because I think sometimes concrete examples are always better than talking abstract. And this is not directly related to China, but it's just related to the way Pelosi and her husband work. And that model, by the way, applies all throughout Congress. So back a few years ago, San Francisco was going to expand their public transit system, basically their light rail and their subway system. And a lot of federal money coming in to fund that. So there's a section of the city where basically it was very depressed. Business has gone out of business. Folks are not living there. Real estate values have plummeted. Pelosi's husband goes in with a consortium and he buys up a whole bunch of commercial real estate at a bargain in this area. Amazingly enough, right after he finishes buying all this, federal funding for new mass transit system into this area is announced, and a whole big project to gentrify this area, bring in all these tech folks, and of course, real estate values go through the roof, right? And this guy turns around in the course of a year, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but makes like a 20-fold return on his investment. But you're supposed to believe that he did not have inside information from his wife, the speaker, about the fact that the federal government was going to fund that, right? He's just that good that he guessed it was going to happen.
Yeah. Things we know that are going to happen, but it's about getting the proof. And probably in courts, the sanctity of marriage and stuff, they can't turn on each other and stuff. So, I mean, it's a gimme for them.
Yeah.
She's one of the most powerful people in the country. So the chance that anybody in the FBI is starting an investigation of her is like zero.
Well,
if you were in the Capitol and walked around for 5 minutes on January 6th with a selfie stick, taking pictures of yourself, you're going to jail. If you're committing major felonies every day, you're walking free.
Yeah. With the FBI, I mean, I'm noticing. So you're in the background there on your shelf. You have your mask there, the Spartan helmet deal.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so that imagery. So there was just some leaked files from the FBI about how they're labeling the domestic terrorism that came out. So that image of that helmet right there would put you on their list and label you as a militia violent extremist.
I actually have a T-shirt that I wear to sleep in it, and this is in case the FBI wakes me up early in the morning, and it says on the front, "Good morning, FBI, Trump won." And on the back, it says, "If you're all special agents, that's not very special, is it?" So, but obviously, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, and I actually, based on my previous employment, have a lot of good friends who are FBI special agents. But the whole point is, if you're going to show up one day and parade me out in the driveway and have CNN photo me, then I'll at least use it as an opportunity to get in a dig at you. So that's...
I believe it, because I came aware of this just listening to another person who does a podcast and has an organization, and this guy had spent a tremendous amount of his military career out of the country, working hand in hand with the FBI for almost everything he did. And his organization, this school that he has out west, is now labeled from the FBI, has labeled him, a militia extremist. And yet he worked hand in hand with these guys.
Yeah, I read the couple articles on that report that you were talking about these images that the FBI has this handout that they're putting out. And I think you're labeled as a militia violent extremist. I didn't even know that acronym existed, MVE.
Yeah, I know. I had to double check. I'm like, what is this?
Well, one of the symbols is that shows you're a violent extremist is if you have the yellow Gadsden flag, the one with the rattlesnake.
The Gadsden flag, yep. Betsy Ross flag, or so many other things.
This goes back to 1775, and actually was the flag used by the very original Continental Marines, the origin of the United States Marine Corps. Their first flag carried in battle to fight for the independence of the country is the Gadsden flag. So, and now you're going to tell me that carrying that flag or displaying that flag is a sign that you are a danger to the Republic. That's the Betsy Ross flag with the circular 13 stars is also now a symbol that you are a dangerous extremist. That's pretty scary.
Yeah, it's all nonsense, and they're going to continue to just label people and the white supremacists or the conspiracy theorists, even though they have become conspiracy facts over the course of a few years. But let's move on to what are you currently working on some projects you're currently working on, and any last thoughts on today's episode.
Well, okay, so I'll remind everybody, 27 August, go to unitepa.net. We need everybody in Bloomsburg that we can possibly get. That takes up a lot of my time. What else do I do? My wife, who's also a retired CIA officer, did all the same work I did it better, looked better doing it. She and I together run an online magazine called And Magazine, AND Magazine, at Substack. We don't run the magazine because it's making us rich, we run the magazine because it gives us and there are a bunch of other former intelligence officers and former State Department officers who write for us. It is a platform that gives us the capacity to tell the truth. I don't have anybody's filter. I don't have to ask anybody's permission. We're very rigorous. We're all intel officers or folks that have written reports. We believe in facts. If I say something, it's because we can document it. We have links, we have references. We don't just make stuff up. But I don't have to worry about anybody's filter. I don't have to worry about who I offend. Just speak truth. What else do I do? I'm involved in a lot of national security stuff still. I'm part of an organization called the Committee Present Danger China. And our job is to sort of educate the country on the danger of communist China and how close we are to losing our position as the number one power on the planet, and recommend policy. Look, we need to radically change course. There's very little hope of that, since the guy sitting in the White House right now works for the communist Chinese. So making recommendations to him is a little bit of a waste of time. So these days, that group probably spends a lot of time just trying to open everybody's eyes to what the Biden administration is really all about. And it's not about us.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be like talking to a wall there.
Well, it's worse. I mean, if Xi Jinping, the guy who runs communist China, could have picked a cabinet and picked a president.
Well, you got a lot of feathers in your hat going on. So, I mean, we're going to be sure to put your links up there.
All right. I try to stay off the street, in other words.
Well, there you have it. Sam Faddis from Unite PA, patriotic grassroots movements across this great state of Pennsylvania. August 27th, rally, Bloomsburg. Be there. Thank you, Sam, for being part of this show. We appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the good fight. Keep up the good work. And remember, Patriots, love your freedom. Defend your freedom. Freedom is everything. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Light of Liberty podcast. Please help us share the truth and safeguard those freedoms. Follow us on Twitter at Light of1776 and listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio, and subscribe on Rumble and YouTube. And remember, Patriots, freedom is everything.